Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for tuning in this morning. I'm Yara Silva, the head of social for the Daily Mirror. And this morning, I am joined by Sally Whittle, journalist, blogger, and parent. So thank you for joining us, Sally. How are you this morning?
I'm very well, thank you. Not too bad.
Good. So we're talking to you today because your daughter is already back at school, which I think is a big worry for a lot of parents at the moment. Lots of fears and questions. So hopefully you can set some minds at ease by answering some questions and having a bit of chat about that today. So when did she go back?
She went back on Monday.
How's it been so far?
I mean, just really a mix of being glad because my daughter is doing her GCSEs this year. So it's really nice to think she's back with actual qualified teachers after having me as a incompetent teaching assistant for the past few months. So that's really nice. I'm really happy that she's with her friends, but also it's scary. It feels a bit like I've just thrown her into a big shark tank, and who knows what's going to happen. So far, she's not thrilled with having to get up in the mornings, but I think generally she's quite happy that she's back. And yeah, on balance, it's okay. It's not been too bad.
So how old is your daughter? What year is she in?
She's just turned 15, so she's in year 11.
Okay. So is the whole school back, or is it just certain years at the moment?
No, everybody came back at the same time. So what my daughter's school did was they decided at the middle of June that, having spoken to lots of parents, they decided that everybody had had enough of home learning. So they finished the term 3 weeks early, with a view to then starting the autumn term 3 weeks early. Which felt like an amazing idea in June when we didn't have to do home learning anymore. And then suddenly it was like, oh God, I've got to go back to school in the middle of August. But it just allowed them to kind of just say, okay, that's not really working. We're just going to wait till everybody came back. And I think the school's done a pretty good job. I know that the staff and the head teacher and so on have been in every day working on plans to bring the kids back. So everybody came back at the same time. And the idea was that for the first week, there wouldn't really be a normal full timetable. They would just get the kids into the new routine, get them used to all the new rules, the new safety processes and that kind of thing. So, and then the idea was to give them an extra couple of weeks to catch up on some of the learning that they've missed while they've been out of school. So yeah, it's been a bit full on, because thinking like she's not just going in with a small group or for one day a week, it's just this is full on back to full-time school with everybody there.
Okay, and so what are the biggest changes for her at the moment?
I think that there's a lot, but I think so they've put each year group into a bubble. So for her, that means that she is in a bubble of about 80-90 kids. They're not supposed to socialize or mix with any other year. So that's been a big change for them. There are staggered lunch times and staggered break times. So the idea being to minimize any contact between kids in different year groups. There are rules around PE. So on days that they have games, I think this is very brave when you're dealing with teenagers, but they will wear their sports kit all day at school.
Oh, wow.
Rather
So no
than,
uniforms for
yeah.
one day of the week.
Yeah, so those teachers have got to be in classrooms with 20 boys who've been playing rugby. So good luck to that. But yeah, so the idea is they're not using changing rooms, they're not mingling. The school snack bar, tragically, is no more. And they have to bring in their own snacks. And I think then it's just the kind of, there's hand washing. Each year group has their own set of toilets. They've got sanitizer everywhere, lots of signs reminding them to social distance. So I think it feels very different to her just on a day-to-day basis, but they are still doing all the same lessons, and just the activities have all completely gone. So no kind of school trips, no outward bound, no school production. So for me, I feel a bit sad because some of the more fun elements of being back at school aren't really going to be there. But academically, I'm really pleased that she's back for the learning side of it.
Do you think they are actually social distancing in school?
Oh God, no. I don't know. Any parent of teenagers will say, the idea that you're going to put a bunch of hormonal, irrational, impulsive teenagers into a building with all their friends that they haven't seen for 5 months and nobody's going to hug anybody, it's just massively unlikely. They're basically as hard to control as toddlers, I think. So I think all you can do is hope that they will broadly social distance and not take things too far. And hope for the best. I'm pretty realistic about it. I'm not expecting that nobody's going to hug anybody, nobody's going to snog their boyfriend, nobody's going to stop giving somebody a high five or whatever it may be. They're kids at the end of the day. So I think you just have to accept that there is a level of risk there and sort of hope that your kids make sensible decisions and minimize the risks.
I guess it depends on the size of the school as well, doesn't it? Because if you're on a big campus, as it were, then you've got plenty of space. But if you're in a small school, it'll be really hard to implement like one-way systems and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, the school does have one-way systems, and I think they have staggered the timetable slightly so my daughter's year group will come out of a lesson, but the other year groups will come out 5 minutes later and then 5 minutes after that. So they minimize the number of students in the hallway at any given time, and they shouldn't really cross paths too often. And things like at lunchtime, they're going in and out of the dining hall at different times. So I think by minimizing the students, it's easier. And I think from what I can see from my daughter, they're being asked to walk in single file between lessons so that they're not, at least if they are closer together, they're not face to face, which is obviously more risky in terms of transmission.
Yeah.
I'm not an expert, but that's my understanding of it. So I think they're doing the best they can. And I think in an ideal world, there are lots of signs that there probably are lots of kids that are social distancing. I just think we have to be prepared as parents that, particularly with teenagers, but equally with younger kids, they're kids and they're going to make mistakes.
Yeah. Well, Andy Summers here is asking, why are we being told that teenagers attending schools and colleges is okay, but it's dangerous for them to go to parties and raves? Well, I mean, they're different things, aren't they? But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, they are different things. And I think there's a risk reward element. So I'm not sure that my teenager would gain an awful lot from going to a house party right now.
Well,
but I'm fairly sure that she's gaining more in a grown-up responsible way from sitting in her GCSE maths class with her teacher. So I think the potential upside of being in school is more important. But also, I do think that when you're talking about parties, and I've seen the pictures on social media of the kids at parties and lying on top of each other on sofas and making out in hot tubs and all those sorts of stuff that goes on. From what I can see from Flea having been at school for a week, it is much more carefully managed and the teachers are working really hard. They're wearing masks within environments where it's closed and there are lots of people there. So for example, on school buses, they're wearing masks the whole time. So I think you just have to balance up as a parent. Okay, what's the upside of this? How important is this for her to be there? And what level of risk am I prepared to accept? And I think with all the policies that are in place, I'm personally okay with her being there. I'm still nervous, like, I think anybody would be, but on balance, I think it's working okay.
Okay. And we've got a question from Taylor. How do you think a child with ASD would cope and how would their needs be met?
I can only speak from my experience, and I don't have a child with any kind of additional needs, but I have found that the school gave us details of particular teachers who were in charge of particular risk assessments, and they've been really open to please ask us questions if your child has a particular dietary need or an educational need or a social need. Talk to us about how we're going to manage that and how we can accommodate that safely. So for other parents, I would just say, get in touch with the school, see who's in charge of the relevant activities, talk to your child's form teacher. There are policies there that the schools seem to be drawing on that should give guidance and ensure that all the students can be kept safely. But I think you have to make your own judgment on how willing and how comfortable a child is going to be able to be to cope with the rules, because there do seem to be an awful lot of new rules to deal with and get used to.
Have you been in touch much with other parents from your daughter's school?
Yeah, I'm probably on, if it's like a sliding scale, I'm probably over here towards the neurotic side. And I think possibly some of the parents are a bit more relaxed about it and have been. We're in a part of the country where there aren't that many cases right now. But yeah, we chat, and I think generally people have felt quite positive about how the kids have got on. And I think, you know what, when you've got 14, 15, 16-year-olds, sometimes there's also, sounds awful, just nice to get them out of the house. And, you know, I have snacks that stay in the fridge all day now, because I never realized until my daughter was at home full time how much teenagers eat and how often they eat. So I think, you know, it shouldn't be taboo to say it's kind of nice to have my own space back, and she's enjoying being back at school. And I think, having talked to other parents, that's the general consensus.
And it's a very different experience from learning at home. Like Trish here is asking, why can't they do lessons online? And, you know, they did do that for a period of time. How did you find the homeschooling element of things?
It was literally like being in a prisoner of war camp. It was awful. You know what? I'm in my 40s. It's a really long time since I did GCSE maths and GCSE chemistry and GCSE. It's really hard. It's really, really hard. And trying to persuade a teenager every single day, my daughter's school did a full timetable of online lessons, and trying to persuade her to be up, to be at the desk by 9 o'clock, to be doing the full lessons. And had she really done the lesson, or had she secretly been watching Netflix on another window on her computer the whole time? And then I'd be getting phone calls from school that something wasn't finished. And I don't think we have fought that much ever in the entire 15 years I've known my daughter. It was really stressful, really hard. And I felt like I was constantly making a decision between, am I trying to be this really bad teaching assistant, or should I be trying to do my job? But there was no way to do both. So honestly, I'm really happy that I don't have to do that anymore. It was just really hard. And I don't think kids get, even with the best Zoom class or the best online lesson or the best Google Classroom in the world, it's not the same as having a teacher standing right there who can say, oh, you're doing that wrong, you might want to switch that around, or giving them that feedback, or even just making sure that they're focused for that full hour and not distracted and doing something else.
So you said teachers are wearing masks in the classroom now?
At our school, the masks are optional, but not mandatory. So some teachers are wearing masks in situations where they feel it would be appropriate, and the same with students. So I send my daughter to school every day with 2 masks in case she drops one. And I do bribe her that if it comes back and it looks like it's been worn, I will give her cold hard cash, which seems
so you're
to be
giving her money
well.
for wearing masks?
I am, because if you know what, one day in your life you will try and make a teenager wear something they don't want to wear, and it's impossible. No, it takes a far, far, far better parent than me to be able to make a teenager do something that her friends aren't doing. But in exchange for cash, she will consider it. So worth it for me. And I just say to her, look, if you're in a room and the door is shut and there are more than 5 other kids in there, put a mask on. And I
Is everyone doing that?
I have no shame.
Is that your idea, or are other parents making their kids do that as well?
That was my idea, but feel free to steal it if you're watching. It does seem to be working. I'm not proud. But yeah, I think some of the kids are wearing masks, some of the teachers are wearing masks, but it's been allowed, with the exception of on school buses where it is mandatory. Basically, people are making a choice as to where and when they feel it's appropriate.
Okay. And are they doing things like having assemblies and, you know, group get-togethers where everyone's in the same room together?
No, so they are having year group assemblies, which allow for the kids to socially distance, but there are no whole school events, no big gatherings. All of the sports practices, as I understand it, are year group only as well. so that they're limiting the number of students, you know, in a changing room, on a pitch, or whatever it may be. So those sorts of things just aren't happening.
And the staggered start times that you mentioned, does that mean that teachers are having really long days, much longer than they used to?
No. So, well, I certainly, as I say, I can only speak for my daughter's school, but what they've done, it's horrible to be at her school at the moment in some ways. They've shrunk break time, and they've shrunk lunchtime, and I think they've got rid of a break, which allows for more teaching time through the day, and then that allows them to accommodate a bit of staggering in terms of when things start and stop.
Okay. So they don't have like some kids starting at 8:30 and other kids finishing at 8:30?
No, no. So they all still finish at the regular time, but I think they allow them out of different entrances so that it minimizes the number of kids in one space. But no, they're all basically doing it within the same start and finish time as it would have been previously.
And what's the situation with the toilets?
So as I understand it, each year group bubble has their own designated toilet within the school, and that's the only one that you're allowed to use. So I guess that keeps them within the bubble even in that. And then the school has said that they have hired extra cleaners who are going in multiple times through the day to clean each toilet. And they're also, I think they've got misters, which I imagine them walking around Ghostbusters style with backpacks and stuff, but they're misting corridors and misting bathrooms through the day as well to just try and keep the hygiene levels good.
That all sounds quite intense. How is your daughter feeling about it? Is she feeling a little overwhelmed, or is she feeling mainly positive?
I think on the first day she panicked. So I must admit, on the first day, they all went in at different times so that they could have an assembly for each group to talk about the rules. And she went in, and I think an hour later, she sent me a text that was like, "Oh my God, this is horrible. Nobody's wearing a mask. Everybody's breaking the rules. Nobody's social distancing. We're all going to die." But I think you've got to allow a little bit of chaos on the first day or two, because I sort of think, you know, you've got all these teachers and schools making these amazing plans, and then suddenly along come 500 kids to spoil it all. And it's going to be a bit chaotic to begin with. But by day 2, day 3, things had calmed down an awful lot. And it felt like it was just settling into a bit more of a routine. So I think the first day and the few days leading up to it, she was very, very anxious. But as she's settled back in, I think she's calmed back down and seems quite positive now.
That makes sense that it will take a little while to get used to all, because it's a lot to change.
Yeah. It's hugely different, and every aspect of the day has been touched slightly. Everything they do is ever so slightly different to what they would have done before. So it's a lot for kids to take on, I think.
We've got a question here from Lucy saying, what about high-risk parents, or just what about parents in general? How is the school run happening? What's different there?
So they're at my school, it's probably a little bit different because they're secondary. So an awful lot of kids would get the bus home, so there's nothing different there apart from the mask wearing. I know that there are now rules that no parents are allowed on the premises except by appointment. And you're strongly discouraged from being anywhere on school grounds. So I just think they're trying as far as possible to have parents not do the school run, and allow the kids to either walk home or take the bus home.
Oh, one more from Gemma. With these year bubbles, if one child gets a positive test, does the whole year group have to isolate? Oh, good and scary question.
It is a good question, and I'm dying to know the answer. And we've had this conversation at home, and I think you can only wait and see. My guess is that the school is still running online lessons and posting all the lesson work in Google Classroom for kids who don't come into school. So I know somebody, a minute or two ago asked about high-risk parents. I know that there are children in the school who aren't going in because either they're at high risk or their parents are at high risk. So my guess is going to be that that's why you bubble them, and that if you get a positive case, I don't know, they're doing contact tracing and stuff like that. So maybe everybody who's had contact with that child will isolate. Maybe it'll be the whole year group. I think it's going to be one of those wait and see. We won't know till it happens what they're going to do.
Do you feel good that you are essentially the guinea pigs of this year, going back before everybody else?
No,
you wish you'd been last.
Obviously, I feel horrible about it. It's a really scary, really stressful situation. But it's okay. I think I had lots of anxiety and lots of worry, and I thought it was going to be awful. And I must admit, when I got that text the first day she went back, I was on the phone to her dad. I'm going to go and pick her up. I'm going to go in a hazmat suit and I'm going to rescue my baby. So I fully understand that it's really stressful and really scary, but I suppose I'm glad we've got it over with, and it sort of feels like it's okay. It doesn't feel any riskier than going into Tesco to do a weekly shop or whatever. It kind of just feels like this is just another thing that we're doing as we move slightly more towards, this adjusted normal that we're going to have to get used to.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot for sharing your experiences with us. Hopefully it will set some other parents' minds at ease a little bit. And thank you for your time today. I know you're very busy. You're in the car even, so you've got places to be. Thank you for giving us your time. And thanks everyone for tuning in. Bye.